Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Ezra, and you're joining What's the Plan? And if you're joining this, you are part of a movement to stop fascism in America by this broad-based, massive, people power-fueled organizing, because we're in the middle of an authoritarian takeover. And while there are a lot of people out there who are going to talk to you about how terrible everything is, and they happen to be right about it, that's not what we want to do here. The whole point of What's the Plan is for us to work through in real time, in real discussions, strategies for how do we resist? How do we fight back in our own lives where we are?
We do this together with you, the people who are organizing, getting active, working across your communities, or maybe you're looking for that community. If so, that's good, because democracy is not a spectator sport. If we want to beat these fascist clowns, we have to all get on the field. There is no way out of this mess that does not require millions of us to get involved, stand up, and do our part. Also, we are married. We want to bring that up just in case we reference it at some point in the conversation. We've been running Indivisible since Donald Trump's first election back in 2017. We bring our experience as former congressional staffers and do-gooder advocates to this work, but we are not the leaders of this movement. There are thousands of local Indivisible groups all over the country led and operated by people like you. We have got a great discussion today. Ezra's going to talk about the new members of our movement. I am going to talk about Minnesota and the ongoing DHS funding fight. And Ezra is going to give some love to members of our movement who have been running primary endorsements and talk about the brand new slate of Indivisible primary endorsements. So,
Love
Ezra, start off. Tell us who is new to Indivisible this week.
Look, as people know, we are a movement of locally led groups. That's how we build and wield power. And every week, all across the country, in red, blue, and purple states, in suburban areas, urban areas, rural areas, new people are raising their hand. People like on this call, people listening to the podcast, they say, gosh, there's not one in my area. I guess I'll start an Indivisible group. Every week, we welcome new people to the movement. So please extend a warm welcome to these brand new Indivisible leaders and their groups. We've got Larry with Indivisible Gadsden, Alabama. In Gadsden, Alabama. We've got John, who's just founded Manteca Indivisible in Manteca, California. Welcome, John. We've got Catherine from Indivisible Broomfield Joy, IB Joy. I love that. Broomfield, Colorado. Suzanne just registered Indivisible Pontiac, Illinois. I think last week we saw Indivisible Pontiac, Michigan Joy. So we've got two Pontiacs Indivisibles in different parts of the country. Laura from South Indy Indivisible in Greenwood or South Indianapolis, Indiana. Karen with Indivisible Miama. It's not Miami. It's spelled Miami, but it's not pronounced Miami. Miama County in Kansas. This is Lewisburg, Kansas. Ava from Las Vegas Indivisible, not Las Vegas, Nevada. That already exists. This is Las Vegas, New Mexico. Welcome, Ava. Attila from Beaufort County Indivisible in Washington, North Carolina. Rebecca with Indivisible Coke County in Newport, Tennessee. Number 10 on the list, we've got Craig from the Teton County Indivisible in Jackson, Wyoming. I'm sorry for the dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen Indivisible groups I did not name. We can't say everybody because it would take up all of our time, but you've heard it here. Red states, blue states, purple states, we're all over, and there is another international one this week, Leah. Elizabeth with Indivisible Perth, Australia. Perth, Australia now has an Indivisible group on the map. I'm hoping that means we see a Perth No Kings in just a few weeks. Looking out for that one. So welcome to all the Indivisible leaders who are joining this movement right now. Welcome to all the MAGA infiltrators who are listening to the podcast and watching this and then posting clips. Hopefully you learned something. We do this all out in the open, as we say every week. This is how we build a mass movement for democracy. And this mass movement for democracy scored some big wins this week, Leah. Is that right? You want to talk to us about Minnesota?
Right. Yeah, let's talk about Minnesota, where the news as of this morning is Donald Trump and Tom Homan's saying that they are going to pull the vast majority of the ICE and CBP army that has been occupying the state out in short order. And first, on a human level, I think it is just important that we recognize how tremendous this is and how this victory was won. There was a statement out from the ICE Out Minnesota coalition that came out this morning in response, and I just want to read a little bit of it because I think it's just so right and so perfect. President Trump thought he could break us, but he was wrong. Over the last 3 months, Minnesotans showed our country what it means to stand up to tyranny and protect our communities. These masked agents leaving our state can be spun any way people want, but history will show what this was. Regular people, clergy and teachers, janitors and soccer moms, people across all of our complicated differences, simply refusing to let our neighbors be attacked and abducted without a fight.
You get chills,
I get
right?
chills.
I mean, come on, like the full power of the federal government, the White House doing everything it can to stomp the Twin Cities, and it wasn't elites, it wasn't business, it wasn't political leaders, it was normal everyday people. I mean, incredible, absolutely incredible.
Look, the story of the Trump administration, the story of the last 15 months is the story of billionaires and corporations and politicians giving up and collaborating with fascism while ordinary people do extraordinary things to fight back and protect their neighbors. And nowhere has made that clearer than Minnesota. An army of moms and senior citizens and organizers defeated the fucking Gestapo. It is amazing. I cannot stress enough, this is an enormous win. It is also part of an ongoing fight because Trump is making a strategic retreat here. They are intentionally trying to bring the temperature down. They know they lost this one, just to be clear. They know that the longer they stay there, the more they're going to lose. They are trying to bring the temperature down so that they can get the funding bill that is currently in front of Congress passed without making any concessions that will further tie their hands.
Yeah.
That is really important to understand here.
So this exists in a broader fight right now because they want more money for the Gestapo. They're in the midst right now this week of asking Congress for more money for the Gestapo. And so they're trying to say, oh, no, Minnesota's not a big deal. You don't need to worry about that. Just give us more money. Exactly.
In a very real sense, the audience for what just happened was national media, because national media is very easily fooled by look over there, everything's fine now, and Democratic senators, because the Trump administration is hoping they can break off enough of the Democratic caucus to get out of this funding mess, to clear the DHS funding budget, keep their unchecked reign of terror going on. Now, remember, they took these folks out of Minnesota. That does not mean they cannot send them tomorrow somewhere else, right? They have made no agreements about how they will deploy folks, how they will use force, how they will, whether or not they will abide by the law. Nothing yet constrains them in how they are going to operate. So I think it's really important that we keep it in mind that we cannot let them move through this funding fight without actual meaningful checks. So we got to celebrate the win, and then we got to go all gas, no brakes on DHS.
To be clear, also, they have said they are scaling down, and I don't trust anything that comes out of this regime. I don't trust any press release. I don't trust any statement. When their lips are moving, they are lying. So I will believe it when I see it.
That is exactly true. We are going to verify. There's no trust but verify. There is just verify in this situation. There's absolutely zero trust.
Distrust and verify.
Distrust and verify, exactly. And on the funding fight, Dems are holding strong so far, in part because the Trump administration is pretty much not negotiating in any meaningful way, and so they are collectively. Oh yeah, really?
Oh, I disagree. I think they're eager to fall in line and not talk about this anymore. The reason why Democrats are holding strong right now is because of y'all, because of people on this call who are amping up pressure right now.
I mean, look, it's both of these things. Like, they don't have even a fig leaf to go on from the Trump administration right now. There's nothing they could present as a meaningful concession in any way. Yeah. And also, they are continuing to feel the heat. So as of now, we are on track for DHS to go into shutdown on Friday at midnight. The House and Senate are going on recess. They are literally not going to be here next week. Our job is just really simple. Keep the heat on and keep the blame on Republicans. This is a choice by Republicans. They are choosing to allow DHS to shut down rather than negotiate checks on ICE's reign of terror. We got to keep the heat on them, and we got to keep the heat on Democrats, because Democrats have a way of getting really nervous as soon as the word shutdown enters the picture. We got to keep bucking them up. They need to understand that this is not just a funding vote. This is a referendum on whether we are going to have a secret police running around this country unchecked, attacking our neighbors with zero consequences and zero accountability.
Yeah. If you need any briefs on this, any call scripts on this, any more information on this, you can go to indivisible.org. If you feel good, you can just call your member of Congress, especially your senator right now, and let them know where you are. But just to say, Republicans are going into recess. They are saying, well, we're just not going to show up to work next week. So that's not written in the Constitution. legislation anywhere. That's not some law. They are choosing to not negotiate over this. So just be very clear who is walking away from the negotiations, who is walking away from this and allowing DHS to go into shutdown. It's the Republicans. It's the Republicans. And the Democrats, credit to them. We have been plenty critical of Democratic leadership, but right now they're not giving in. Right now they are not giving in. And I am, I will reserve judgment until the end of the fight, but right now, as long as they're running this play, that's good. I want to explain one reason why Democrats are standing strong right now, because I don't think it's immediately obvious to everybody. And one of those reasons is we are in a primary campaign right now within the Democratic Party nationwide. So I want to talk about this primary campaign because I think there's a common way that people think about primaries that I agree with, but I think it's only half the picture. And that common way people think about it is that the point of a Democratic primary is to get behind the candidate who you think best represents the future of the party. So when we take the House and the Senate and we got the majority in 2027, or when we take the presidency and we've got a Democratic trifecta in 2029, the Democrats who we select in primaries now, this year, are going to be the ones that are governing, who are crafting the legislation, or crafting the strategy, or crafting the messaging. That's really important, and I believe in that. I think that's really important. But I think another reason for primaries that doesn't get enough attention is the impact it has right now, y'all. Right now, because what every single Democrat is doing, the good ones, the not so good ones, they are looking around and they see the grassroots energy. And the question on their minds is this grassroots energy just going to protest and then show up in the general election? Or is this grassroots energy going to challenge me because I'm not fighting back hard enough? And that's a very important question for the overall orientation of the Democratic Party, not in 2027, not in 2029, but in this funding fight for DHS right now. Right now. So I got to say, I love a vision for the future, but I am obsessed with surviving to fight another day right now, and we're living through a fascist breakthrough moment where we need a unified opposition party that doesn't need to be pushed to fight back, but that just fights back. And so primaries are a way to convince them, if you do not fight back, we're going to replace you with fighters who do. So in that vein, I want to celebrate the local Indivisible groups who are leading this charge, because Indivisible National just came out with our 3 first endorsements nationwide for Democratic primaries. And that was not me and Leah or anybody else in DC sitting in a room and picking names for who our favorites were. That's not how we operate. The way Indivisible operates for primary endorsements is local Indivisible groups take the lead. They endorse a candidate, they nominate that candidate for a national endorsement, then a vote of all members in the district or state has to be a supermajority support. And then and only then do we issue a national endorsement. We did 3 of those this week. So I want to call out, as if we've not praised them enough because they've just done so much damn good, Minnesota Indivisible Alliance. This is the statewide network of dozens and dozens of indivisible groups all across the state of Minnesota came together and endorsed Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan in her campaign to be the next Democratic senator from Minnesota. And this Peggy Flanagan, if you don't know her, got the support of Elizabeth Warren and the nurses and organized labor and a lot of grassroots groups for a good reason. She's been an incredible ally of Governor Tim Walz, delivering progress in real ways. But it's not just about how great Peggy Flanagan is. Primaries are about choices, y'all. We are choosing what version of the Democratic Party we're going to have, what version of a fighting Democrat we're going to have. And Peggy Flanagan is up against Angie Craig, a conservative Democrat in a House district in Minnesota. Chuck Schumer is raising money for her. She's taken money from the crypto industry and from AIPAC and from corporate donors. Angie Craig voted for Laken Riley, the first bill stripping immigrants of their rights, first bill to make it to Donald Trump's desk last year. And mere months ago, this is egregious, but months ago, she voted to thank ICE for its service. So that's the choice. And I'll be honest, without intervention, probably the Chuck Schumer and corporate Dem crowd wins. It requires a group like Minnesota Indivisible Alliance to cut through the noise and say, that's not the version of the Democratic Party we need now. We're behind Peggy Flanagan. And one of the impacts of that is we're going to have an incredible leader. The other impact of that Angie Craig, she ain't voting for resolutions that thank ICE for their service anymore. She's doing her best to show that she's a real fighter. I don't think she's going to win this primary, but the message is clear right now that if you're a Democrat looking for votes, you got to be on the fighter side. This is true also in New York 10. Got to thank Indivisible Brooklyn. Indivisible Brooklyn came out swinging for Brad Lander. They did the endorsement process, nominated Brad Lander for a national endorsement. We have now just endorsed him this week. I'm sure you know Brad Lander. He's incredible. He's been an ally basically since Indivisible has started and only recently started getting more national prominence. The last year, you might have seen him. He was tackled and arrested by Trump's secret police force. And so he's just this real public servant who's been out there on the right side of every fight. He's up against Dan Goldman. That's the choice. And Dan Goldman is this super rich corporate Democrat in a very safe Democratic district who voted for more crypto bribes. And even after Mamdani won the Democratic primary, Goldman refused to actually come out and endorse the candidate. It's a choice. Again, this is a safe Democratic district. You can have somebody who's a fighter or somebody who's not. And congrats to Indivisible Brooklyn. Thank you to Indivisible Brooklyn for doing the hard work to say, no, we actually have a preference of our types of leaders. The last one I want to call out, I don't know if you know this person. She's incredible, and you're going to hear a lot more about her. Dr. Jasmine Clark. And this is amazing for her. She is in Georgia 13. This was multiple Indivisible groups in Georgia 13. Indivisible Gwinnett, In Town Women's Resistance, and Necessary Trouble Georgia. Leah, I love the name Necessary Trouble Georgia as an Indivisible group name. Love it. She's a state rep right now, big record on democracy and healthcare and public education. Her opponent's been in office for more than half a century. He didn't vote in the last 7 elections, y'all. He has not even voted in the last 7 elections, and yet he did find time and energy to team up with Angie Craig and a lot of Republicans to express thanks to ICE last year. He broke with Democrats literally last month to vote for additional funding for ICE. Again, safe Democratic district. You got one incumbent who is in there carrying water for corporations, carrying water for the status quo, and one upstart, one young candidate with a record who is a fighter. This is the opportunity in front of us. Yeah. These are going to be fighters in 2027 when we need to hold this regime accountable. These are going to be fighters in 2029 when we need a generational reform. But they're also, by sending a message now. Indivisible National cannot get involved unless local Indivisible groups lead. So again, if you are watching this, you're like, damn, that's cool. That's great. This is inspiring me. This is the kind of the party that I want to get behind. Work with your local Indivisible group if there's a competitive election. Not all of y'all have this opportunity, but if there's a competitive primary, figure out who you want representing you, do the organizing necessary, get behind them and nominate them for a national endorsement. This is how we build a new version of the Democratic Party that doesn't fail us.
I think that was all true. And I do just want to add another piece of this, which is that we also think primaries right now are a really crucial tool for telling a story of a Democratic Party that more people might potentially have faith in the general election, right? Because part of what we need to do here is not just run, we're big fans of no is a complete sentence. We spend a lot of time being in pure say no resistance posture. And also, we understand that people are ultimately going to need to believe that the other side, the people who want your vote, are capable of delivering on something, are not in the pockets of big corporate interests, of crypto, of APAC, that there are people who are actually, trustworthy and authentic and real and determined to deliver for you in a way that makes it worth your time to get out and vote for them. So every candidate that we're putting forward is also a vote for a party that can make a compelling pitch that it is really here for you and for your interests.
We're going to try to have some of these candidates on What's the Plan in future What's the Plan, so we'll try to work that out. But just to repeat, for folks who are looking for who to support, because you're going to be hearing from us about these folks, they depend on grassroots support. None of these candidates take corporate money. None of these people take crypto money. None of these people take APAC money. They depend on grassroots support. So I'm going to call them out, and I hope you support them. Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota. Brad Lander in New York, Dr. Jasmine Clark in Georgia. You're going to be hearing a lot about them from us, please, but don't wait for that. Go and support. This is how we win. This is how we build a party that we can be proud of, and that's going to stomp the regime in the midterms. Okay, Leah, is that what we've got?
Yeah, let's get some questions in.
Let's turn to the Q&A. Off to the Q&A. As a reminder, if you are on the live Zoom, you can ask questions and vote for questions. If you are listening to the podcast, that's where these questions come from. We simply go through in order of what gets the most votes. So with that said, I'm going to answer the question that got the most votes. KC asks a few important questions related to DHS warehouses and detention centers, as this issue feels especially urgent. Really appreciate you raising this, KC. It's a top topic at Indivisible right now. 1, can you discuss the recent large warehouse purchases by ICE and the doubling of the numbers of people that will be detained in them? If they attain the buildings they want. 2, what can we do to stop these purchases sooner rather than later? 3, do you know when any members of Congress will be visiting the current detention centers for accountability so that we can get more eyes inside them? HCR defines these as concentration camps, and Rachel Maddow recently discussed how this is flying under the radar. So continuing discussion about this is crucial. Leah, feel free to answer any part of that, but I would also lay the groundwork on what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so taking a step back, I think we can talk about how we got here. So Stephen Miller has set absolutely enormous quotas for ICE and CBP in terms of detaining immigrants. They are massive. The way that they are largely coping with those quotas is that they are switching from any kind of model where they're, actually trying to focus on people who, may have committed crimes, et cetera, to simply finding the easiest targets they possibly can. That is why you hear about ICE showing up at Home Depot and detaining people out of a parking lot. That's why you hear about them lurking outside of schools and daycares in heavily immigrant areas. They're trying to meet these quotas. Another thing that happens as a result of these super aggressive demands is more people are being detained than can be moved through the system in any kind of meaningful order. There is a longer conversation about how incredibly broken all aspects of the system is, including access to legal counsel, et cetera. But long story short, there are more people who are being detained than there is currently capacity to hold them. Now, this is a problem on a bunch of different fronts, just in terms of the overall, setup that got us here. But it's also leading to this situation where what the federal government is doing is they are simply abandoning any responsibility to care for the people that they have detained with basic human dignity, and are instead moving to these models where they're putting them in places that are wildly insufficient, wildly degrading, totally unsafe, unfit for keeping people anywhere. All of this is wrong on every possible level, and also they're just finding new and more horrifying ways to do more all of this is wrong on every possible level, and somehow they are just finding new ways to be horrible every day.
Well, and importantly, one of the reasons why you get an entire, a giant compound, look at what they've done to people when the cameras are rolling in broad daylight. You get a giant compound that nobody can get into because you want to do even worse things. And we know that based on reporting that we're hearing from folks who do manage to get inside and then report out.
Absolutely. And from reports from immigrants inside. Like there was a protest by immigrant families within the Texas Dilley facility.
Children.
But yeah, children, moms, and knowing exactly how horrible the conditions are, knowing exactly how repressive the guards are, the fact that they are actually protesting themselves is both enormously courageous and is itself a demonstration of exactly how bad things are. So with all of that foundation, there have been a bunch of these warehouse purchases in various places. There are more moving forward. This is often going to be really about a local and state fight, right? Like there will be land use guide. There are all kinds of ways in which a determined local constituency can make it a lot harder for the federal government to successfully take over and start using a warehouse for its designs here. And so I'm not going to be able to get into all of it, but I know that there are a bunch of Indivisible groups who are on the call who are already in these fights on a local level, trying to make sure that the local government is using all of the possible regulatory tools in the toolkit to impede the operation of warehouses in their areas. We know there's like an evolving set of folks around the country who are thinking about how do we successfully learn from each other and use those tools. This is going to be a really important local fight. So if you are in a location where you know that one of these is coming, and you're not part of an Indivisible group, get connected as fast as you can. If there is not one in your area, please start one. We will be happy to help you however we can. We think this is going to be a really important part of the ongoing pushback against the regime.
And we're seeing this kind of pushback in red areas, in rural areas. This is not like liberal America is against these detention camps. People don't want these detention camps being constructed, but I do think there is a danger that it's flying under the radar. They would like it to fly under the radar. The last thing they want is attention on the atrocities they are committing.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And they're trying to do these often in places that are, fairly rural, fairly farther away from major population centers, et cetera. The good news is we've got there are people in rural areas, there are people in red areas who oppose this everywhere too. We just have to get organized.
Yep, that's right. Judy asks, how do we get friends and family, quote unquote, off the couch and to be more involved or even be willing to talk about the current state? They're politically aligned, but they're reluctant / overwhelmed / cynical to engaged. Thanks. That's Judy from Indivisible Palo Alto Plus. Thanks for asking, Judy. I think this is something I think a lot of folks on the call have confronted, that people who are in our lives, friends, colleagues, neighbors, who agree with us, who will say, I can't believe what's happening in the Twin Cities, or did you see what Trump just did? Wild. And then they go about their day and they're not participating anyway. I do think this is a fundamental organizing challenge for us, because I do think that our main enemy here, we say this a lot, our main enemy, it's not the regime, it's not Donald Trump, it's not the Republicans, it's not Democrats who failed to actually fight back. The main enemy is this thing that you're pointing to here, cynicism, nihilism, fatalism, the sense that we don't have any power, it's bad, but what are you going to do about it? And that's an organizing challenge, because it's not just us convincing people that it's bad. It's not just us convincing people that that side is wrong and that they should be out of office and not have power. It's trying to convince people that you don't wait until election day to do something about it. And in fact, there is something productive that you can do, that it is worth your time, that you don't have to be a self-identified activist type. This doesn't need to be part of your identity, that you always show up at protests or you engage in advocacy. This is actually something that you can do that will contribute to a shared goal. And this is part of the purpose of something like No Kings 3. So in a few weeks, we're going to have the largest protest in American history. And part of the point of No Kings 3 is to create a very easy on-ramp, something that is not just something that people should do, like they got to do it because they're supposed to do it, but it's fun. There's bands, there's funny signs. It's a welcoming place to bring your kids and your dog. And somebody said they were bringing their cat on a leash. Whatever makes sense for you. That's wild to me.
They should not do that.
Well,
probably.
Some people have better cats than our cat.
Yeah, maybe if your cat is better than ours, maybe.
Yes, that's right. But so creating an easy on-ramp. But what I really want from No Kings is not just for those friends who are reluctant and on the couch to say, oh, that would be fun. I'm going to go. Yeah, let's go check it out this Saturday. What real success is, they have a good time and there's an Indivisible group there, well represented with a big banner that has a meeting the next weekend, or a 50-51 group, or a Sunrise group, or pick whichever local organized group. But they're there representing, and they convince that person to be like, yeah, come to my next meeting. We're all gathering to talk about what we do. Just come, stick your toe in the water. And then from that, you've got your hooks into them. But it is our responsibility to break through that cynicism. This is why we're on the call right now, y'all. This is what this is about. Organizing is about meeting people where they are and convincing them that it is in their interest to participate in our shared project right now. And I will say, I know there's a lot of cynicism out there. I know there's a lot of fatalism out there. But 48 hours after Alex Preddy was murdered, we had more than 200,000 people on an Eyes on ICE training from all over the country. Those weren't people who were just sitting on the couch, or if they were sitting on the couch, they were sitting on the couch with a pad of paper, taking notes, watching a Zoom where ACLU trained them on what to do when an ICE agent tells them to stop exercising their First Amendment rights. There is hunger out there to do real things, to be a real part of the solution. People don't want to be part of bullshit. People don't want to waste their time. People don't want to feel like dupes. So just signing some letter, just donating money to some questionable organization, yeah, they might be checked out. But if you give people a meaningful thing to do, even if it's more, I think there is hunger out there to do more and to be part of something real. That's why we organize locally, to provide that real participation in democracy that we think is necessary in this moment.
I'll just offer a couple of additional practical thoughts in terms of how you actually try to move somebody from that doom scrolling space, right? Like, I'm upset about everything, but what could I possibly do about it? A lot of people have this sense that activism is for other people. They're not an activist. That's a bunch of people. They're over here. They're culturally different than me. They're not really relevant to my life. And so I think that it can sometimes be a lot easier to try to break it down into, one ask, one task, one invitation, and make it simple, make it something that's appealing to them, and make it social, right? Like, hey, do you want to come with me to this postcarding party, and afterwards we will go out for dinner, right? If it's a friend or family or someone who you would hang out with, right? Ask them if you're part of an Indivisible group, and maybe there's somebody who doesn't want to go to a protest, but they might help with, getting the food for a potluck or something like that, where you're actually thinking about who is this person? What do they enjoy doing? What are they good at? What is a way that makes them feel like they're meaningfully being engaged and contributing to something that maybe doesn't feel like just immediately throwing them in the deep end on, activism with a capital A, and just try to figure out that gateway activity that gets them in the door, so that you can then continue to ladder them up and help them explore and start to feel their own agency as they get more involved.
Mm-hmm. Great question, though, Judy. I think this is a number one challenge for all of us over the course of the year as we try to build up the mass pro-democracy force out there. Madeline asked, the New York Times reported yesterday that House and Senate Republicans have around $320 million at their disposal, more than double the Democrats' $137 million, and that's not even counting the more than $300 million in President Trump's super PAC. The Times article said that some Democratic donors continue to be skeptical of party leadership, including Ken Martin, and Democratic donors are skittish about making public contributions out of fear of Mr. Trump. The opposite is true of Republicans. Corporate donors see advantage to outwardly supporting the party in power. Question: how best to equalize the playing field? Focusing on individual candidates seemed the best, but there are so many key races. How can our gifts be most impactful?
Look, I don't think you can separate the problems that we talk about when we talk about the Democratic Party in the primary season from the problems that are fueling some of the money trouble here, right?
That's right.
Think about the trajectory of the DNC. You had a choice for DNC chair between Ben Wickler, somebody who had a demonstrated excellent ability to do public communications on behalf of the Democratic Party, somebody who had a strategy that successfully moved Wisconsin out of functionally one-party undemocratic rule, up against Ken Martin, who is a nice guy. Lots of people like him. He's very, very popular within kind of the state DNC or state Democratic parties network. And also not known to the public, not somebody who had that same credibility and record externally. There was a decision to kind of go with more of the same. And there was a decision of this is not the moment to do any kind of deeper thinking about who we are, to try to shake things up, to try to put something else forward. You see the same thing with the autopsy, right? The Democratic Party did a 2024 autopsy. They have not moved to do a public release of the contents of the autopsy because they do not want to distract from the next election. The problem with that, though, is that it does not give people confidence that there's any kind of analysis about how you're actually addressing the problems that got us here. And so I think you've got to see what's happening with the fundraising as a lagging indicator that a lot of people need to have more of a center of gravity, more of a sense of what they're going to have faith in before they open their wallets.
Look, I think we need to be real right now, y'all, because we have one fascist party that is implementing the least popular agenda in possibly American history, that is trampling the Constitution, that is engaging in illegal behavior as the economy sucks for the vast majority of people in this country. And that party is more popular than the Democratic Party. The least popular political figure in the country is not Donald Trump. It's not John Thune. It's not anybody in the Republican Party. It's Chuck Schumer, who leads the Democrats in the Senate. We are not confronting a basic fundamental brand problem that the Democratic Party has, and it goes deeper than what are the policies that they support. Often the debate is the party too far left or too far right? Where do we moderate in order to get more voters, or where do we get more progressive and to encourage more people to vote? I think it's worse than that. Nobody trusts the party to deliver. Nobody actually believes it matters what the party says it stands for because they don't believe they're actually going to do stuff for normal everyday people. And to Leah's point, in response to losing the House, the Senate, and the presidency in 2024, we got the establishment pick for DNC chair. We stuck with the leader of the Senate, and we stuck with the leader in the House. There were no changes made, and then there was an active effort to bury any analysis of what happened. This is why primaries can be really helpful in this moment. I am not interested in yelling about failed leadership in the Democratic Party any longer. We have seen that for 15 months. I want to be cheerleading a strong, popular, fighting Democratic Party, but we're not going to get that through nicely worded letters or calls to existing leadership. The way that we build a party that can inspire people to vote and donate is by winning some primaries where we're electing people who inspire people to vote and donate. It's right in front of us right now. So I hear the concern about the big war chest that the Republicans have. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to stomp them in the midterms. I'm predicting that right now. They can have all the money in the world. They are going down. And they're going to go down all the more if we have a Democratic Party that is full of a new slate of leaders in the rural South, in the Northeast, in the Northwest, all over, who are replacing status quo Dems with something new, who represent a new brand. So I'm not telling you don't worry about this. I'm actually telling you worry about this and get involved in primaries right now. Yeah. Find somebody who excites you, who you want to help brand the Democratic Party in a new way. That's how we're going to build forward towards the midterms.
And I will just add on the basic question of how do we make our gifts most impactful. First of all, it's pretty much always the most impactful if you want a specific person to win, to give to them directly. Candidates have the ability to spend money in more efficient ways than outside efforts that are being run on their behalf. And also, to Ezra's point, I really cannot emphasize enough that money early in primaries goes incredibly long distance in terms of making sure that that is a competitive race, in terms of giving the candidate enough resources to insulate against the inevitable massive crypto or APAC money dump that is likely to be unleashed against them. Primaries are actually like in light of exactly how expensive our overall electoral system is, primaries are actually like a relatively inexpensive way to shift the direction of the party and obtain outsized results. There is a reason that people like crypto and APAC have spent so much money on it. It is because they have figured that out and they are doubling down on that investment. We as a progressive ecosystem and as a sector have been slow to match that. Well, match it might be ambitious. We have been slow to recognize and to successfully move resources in the same strategic way.
I just want to make clear also, it's not your responsibility, anybody on this call, to save the entire Democratic Party from itself or to change or engage in every race. What I would recommend is bite off what you can chew, which is to say, if there's a competitive primary in your district or state, great, focus on that. That's where you can do the most good. If there isn't one, that's okay. Look around the country, find one or two candidates you're like, I'm going to adopt that candidate. My Indivisible group or my family or myself, I'm going to say those are the candidates. Those are the couple of candidates who I'm really going to. I'm going to donate some money to them. I'm going to volunteer for them. I'm going to tell my friends and family and community about them. You don't need to do everyone. If everybody picks out a couple, we're going to get there. You're not going to see Indivisible tackle every single possible race out there. We've got 3 this week. I would humbly suggest that you take a look at those 3 candidates if there isn't one obviously on your list so far. I think this is going to be a big year, though. I think we're going to see a serious rebranding of the Democratic Party over the course of the primaries. And the way we're going to do that is by grassroots groups like Indivisible Brooklyn, like Gwinnett County Indivisible, like Indivisible Minnesota Indivisible Alliance, choosing to take on this task. Kim has the next question. Why isn't more being done in response to the information that's been coming out of the Epstein files so far, even as we wait for the rest to be released?
You want to take that one?
Well, I think one of the things that's notable, or 2 things that are notable. One, Republicans have adopted a frame of, nothing to see here. Let's not focus on this. And 2, major mainstream media outlets are declining to cover it in depth. A lot of people aren't closely focusing on this right now. And I will say Democrats are doing their damnedest to shine a light on the crimes that have been committed and raise the alarm. And they should continue doing it. But this regime is not going to go and investigate any of these crimes. We saw that Bondi made very clear when asked how many people have you actually investigated for the crimes revealed in the Epstein report. She didn't even answer the question. She's not even attempting to answer the question. They have their line, which is nothing to see here, folks. We're focusing on anything else. And it's a requirement for our elected officials to keep on raising this. And at the federal level, they can raise this in committee hearings. They can raise this in public venues. At the state and local level, they should be using tools at their disposal that they have, and at the federal level, we just don't have because Republicans control all that.
I will just note, I do think that there are some ongoing efforts. I'll say earlier today there was a really striking and infuriating moment I'm going to miss which hearing it was, but when Democrats asked Pam Bondi to apologize to Epstein victims who were in the room. First they said they asked the Epstein victims who had requested and been denied a meeting with Pam Bondi to stand up. A large number of very brave women stood up. Pam Bondi was offered the opportunity to apologize to them. She declined to do so. Just absolutely infuriating stuff happening right there. So continuing to keep the heat on via all of the tools at our disposal. And then we have also got to recognize that this is a political issue. This is a story that voters need to understand about the extraordinary degree of elite impunity, the ways in which people with that level of money and prestige and power are simply beyond any of the normal rules or expectations that we have for our society, any kind of normal morals or ethics that regular people uphold on a daily basis. And we actually need to tell that story collectively, and we need to link it to the ways in which money has degraded our political system, the ways in which this is part of a broader, elite class of folks who have been ravaging the middle class and the working class in order to accumulate extraordinary sums of money for themselves and put themselves simply beyond the reach of any of the normal systems of morality, ethics, or legality that we are all subject to.
Yeah. You wouldn't, had we made claims that this was out there a year ago, we would have been tinfoil hat wearing wackos. Like you can't make up what reality is right now. You wouldn't have been able to. It's so offensive, egregious, disgusting, and the idea that we're just going to move on from this. Yeah. That there aren't going to be any repercussions. That Democrats should just let go of this and focus on healthcare or jobs or inflation. The people care about this, and Democrats should be making as much attention focused on this as they possibly can. And I this is not a place where I have a real critique of Dems in Congress. I think they are doing what they can to bring attention on this, and they are meeting a brick wall from the regime. We'll see how long they can keep that up. Trump's own coalition was taught to care deeply about this over the course of years. They are trying to pull a 180 now. I think it's going to be tough for them. I really do.
I also just think regular people are perfectly capable of making some of the connections here, right? Like the people who are stealing from your healthcare in order to fund a secret police that ravages your communities are the people who are running cover for global billionaires who have extracted enormous amounts of wealth from all of the rest of us and who are continuing to try to use the federal government to obtain more ever greater sums for their own personal benefit. And all of those things are tightly connected, actually. I think people get that. Like this is all about, a class of people who are simply operating by a different set of rules.
Yep. But ultimately, in order to really hold these people accountable, we got to roll back power. We need subpoena power of the House and the Senate. We need to be able to provide oversight. We ultimately need to have the DOJ and bring justice to the victims. That's what it's going to take. And in order to make that a fait accompli, we need Democrats promising that that's what's going to come. And I'm happy to say a lot of them are right now. This is one place where we see a lot of proactive behavior on the part of Dems. Next question's from Indivisible SF, San Francisco. Bev asks, should we prepare for a SAVE Act coup? How? Here's my nightmare. 1, wait until late October, so there's no time to gather documents. 2, nuke the filibuster. 3, pass it in the Senate. 4, wait out the unrest of the court case at the Kangaroo Supreme Court while consolidating power. Bev, there are a million things that we can care about in any given moment. For those who don't know, the SAVE Act is indeed an attempt to make it more difficult for people to vote because Republicans are scared of people voting. That's very much true. This is not top of my list of bad outcomes that we really, really need to prepare for, in part because there is so much institutional aversion to filibuster reform in the Senate. We've heard this from John Thune directly. I'm not a fan of John Thune, but the Republican establishment types, not the super MAGA types, but the Republican establishment types, are more likely to simply go along with efforts by Trump's DOJ or other parts of Trump's regime to subvert the election and mess with ballot boxes than they are to undo the filibuster in order to pass the SAVE Act, which will make it harder for people to vote. So we believe that we're going to be able to kill the SAVE Act in the Senate. That is my current belief. We should organize against it. We should make sure that Republicans like Elisa Murkowski are coming out against it. That firms our position. John Fetterman, who is repeatedly demonstrating that he is an embarrassment to the state of Pennsylvania and to pro-democracy advocates everywhere, is now for it after saying he was against it. But just because we lost Fetterman does not mean we've lost this fight. I believe we will kill in the Senate. It requires 60 votes. I don't think they have 60 votes. Because we have to triage, because there's so many threats out there, I would advise you, if you're losing sleep about something, don't lose sleep about a late October passage of the SAVE Act. I think there are plenty of other things that we should worry about before then.
I agree with that. I think there are a lot of things that keep us up at night about the 2026 election and about potential election subversion. We are worried. Yeah.
Somebody just noted in the chat, and we should know because it's important to name and shame. Henry Cuellar was the only House Democrat to vote for the SAVE Act. You might know Henry Cuellar. He has been named as Trump's favorite Democrat. He also was facing pretty serious crimes for corruption. Then Donald Trump issued a pardon for him, and then Hakeem Jeffries and House Democrats welcomed him back to his committee spot.
This is such an infuriating sequence of events, like top to bottom.
People are saying primary, don't worry, he's getting gerrymandered out of his district. He's not going to be in Congress next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, again, one of the big problems we have with making a really clean corruption stick on Donald Trump is that people think everyone in Washington is corrupt, and they think that Donald Trump is just better at it. And every time you have a situation where we, as the Democratic Party, appear to be pretty laissez-faire about corruption, we reinforce that same impression. And so it's a really damaging dynamic to have a situation where someone gets a pardon from Donald Trump, which we are all clear is not like a real determination of innocence. It's just Donald Trump throwing a quid pro quo at you.
That's right.
And then gets reinstated as if there are not still serious ethical considerations and ethical issues in their conduct. That is a problem.
This is why we talk about a Democratic brand problem. Because I think sometimes when we talk about grassroots should engage in primaries or Indivisible or others should, it becomes is this ideological, like left versus right? I want to be clear. This is about, do we have a Democratic brand that people can believe in? And if you've got sitting members of the Democratic caucus in positions of power who have been very clearly engaged in corrupt activities, that hurts everybody. That hurts Democrats in progressive districts. That hurts Democrats in swing districts. If you want to build a majority, don't have corrupt members. If you want to build a majority, don't take money from crypto, which is deeply unpopular. If you want to get a Democratic majority, don't take money from AIPAC that is investing in fascist members in Republican districts. This isn't left versus right, y'all. This isn't just left versus right.
And we have got folks that we work with a lot more closely these days who are very much in the centrist category, right? We've got people who we're really proud of and excited about, even though we have been frustrated with them in the past on many fronts. And so I do think that key point is really crucial, right? We are talking about fighters. We are talking about people who understand what time it is, who understand that we are in an emergency and that we have to use all the tools in our toolkit, and that requires a different orientation towards concentrated power and wealth in this country.
Right on.
Now, I do just want to name, because I wanted to just quickly highlight some of the things that most keep me up at night about the late stage part of the election, just because, if I'm worrying, why would I not ask you all to worry too? I think two of the places that we are most concerned about, there is a longer list, but two of the things that we're most concerned about and thinking about preemptively is the risk for Republican, local, or state elected official interference in partnership with Trump and the federal government in places where there is a race of national significance. So House districts, Senate races that are in places where there is local or state Republican governance and where there might be the potential for a race to go Democrats' way, like places like Iowa, right? Or Iowa, North Carolina, if we're thinking about Ohio, the places where you might have some kind of meaningful interference designed to prevent any kind of Democratic win.
Florida.
Right. And then the other piece is what Texas. I would call generally frontal assaults on Democratic population centers. So CBP can operate within 100 miles of the border all over the country. This is just to be clear, insane, because if you look at a map of how many population centers are within 100 miles of the border, it is an enormous amount of the country. We're worried about situations where you see CBP or ICE deployed in places that are where it's very visibly intended to suppress the vote. We're worried about efforts to seize voting machines, all of the kinds of things that might be done in order to mess with the voting process in bluer areas. Does not take that much in order to upset the voting process, create a bunch of chaos, make it really hard to have anything that looks like a free and fair election in the places where you would count on for Democratic votes. So those are just two of the scenarios that we're really tracking and thinking about that are very important. I know as soon as I say that, I'm going to get emailed with 8,000 other ones to worry about. We are aware. We are trying to work through them. Late passage, kind of Hail Mary SAVE Act is not really on the list of that.
Great. Next question is from Christine, group leader in the Resistance Alliance, Hawthorne, New Jersey, co-organizer of Hands Off Across New Jersey and Constitution Day. In past calls, Indivisible leadership has said impeachment wasn't viable because the votes weren't there, but many of us believe that the calculation may be shifting as DOJ inaction and apparent cover-ups become increasingly visible, fueling public anger and eroding trust in institutions, with February 17th being the National Day of Lobbying for Impeachment and the real momentum building at the grassroots. CD12 with Anna Leah. Anyone, why isn't Indivisible putting its full organizing weight behind impeachment now? And what is the plan to reassess the political landscape as conditions change and urgency escalates? Want to be clear, Donald Trump should be impeached. Just to put to rest, Donald Trump should be impeached again multiple times. He's committed God knows how many crimes.
Donald Trump should have been impeached in February, just to be clear. I mean, January, 2 days after he took office, he had committed crimes befitting and landing at that level.
Agreed. But
also, before I get started, I do just want to say huge shout out to New Jersey 11th and Anna Leah. This is incredible news. This is a big congressional victory, upset win, but due to, in part, an incredible grassroots organizing operation. We're going to see an amazing progressive taking office in that seat. We are collectively, much like her opponent in the initial race, Tom Malinowski, collectively going to stand behind her as, in the face of any potential APAC interference, et cetera. Big win, really important lesson there. Now, when it comes to impeachment, like we said, we think that Donald Trump should have been impeached or should be impeached. And also, there's a really big difference between do you think Donald Trump merits impeachment and do you think that this is the issue that we should collectively focus on to campaign on right now versus other issues. Right now, there is a live funding fight. There will be a bill that either passes or does not pass that gives more money to DHS, gives more money to ICE and CBP, puts some meaningful restrictions on what they're able to do or does not. Our focus is on the campaign that will collectively keep Democrats bucked up to try to obtain the maximum that we can out of that must-pass piece of legislation. In general, when we're thinking collectively about where do we put our effort, where do we put our focus, we're thinking along two lenses. The first is what builds the maximum coalition against Donald Trump and MAGA during this period when we are out of power and do not have the ability to successfully vote for and convict Trump in the Senate. So we're thinking about how do we actually build the broadest possible coalition. And to do that, we want to focus on issues where we're actually able to pull more people to our side, where we're able to energize our base, where we're able to really energize people because there's a tangible connection to their personal lives or because there's a very deep moral reaction to what is happening. And so we're thinking about what do we actually talk to people who are maybe not that engaged politically about. That's one issue or one lens. The other is harm mitigation. Where can we do real good right now? Where at the margins can we help to protect people, help to mitigate some of the horrors that are happening, actually make a real tangible difference? Those are the two lenses that we're using. When I'm thinking about how I'm going to talk to a voter who didn't vote in 2024, or maybe even somebody who voted for Donald Trump because they were really frustrated with the status quo, I'm going to think about issues that are really tangible, really personal, really high on their list of things that are bothering them. I'm going to think about stuff that's really popping in the news and resonant and salient. I'm going to think about the stories that I tell that are going to try to engage that person. What we've heard and what we found in a lot of times around impeachment is that it often lands particularly to folks who are not already super politically engaged as a process story. It lands as kind of it's about politics instead of being about an issue that is directly relevant and resonant to their lives. And so there's a choice between not is it merited, but are we going to center it in our public communications in a way that encourages people to think that that's the issue, that's the story of the day right now, and that's what's most relevant for them. And our assessment is we would rather that person hear about healthcare. We would rather that person hear about ICE's reign of terror. We would rather that person hear about the Epstein cover-up and the rule of a large number of elite billionaires acting with total impunity. Those are stories that we want to reach people with rather than having them think that there's some kind of complicated process story.
I agree with all that. I still think eventually we're probably going to be needing to impeach the bastard. And actually, to make it a little bit more concrete, we should be looking at who is out there pushing for real accountability. And I want to focus attention for a second on Al Green. Do y'all remember Al Green? He was the one member of the Democratic House during the last State of the Union who stood up actually to Trump, and then some members of the Democratic Party voted with Republicans to censure him. Al Green, right now, he is being targeted by the crypto industry because he dared to speak out against the crypto industry. So the crypto industry, which is going to funnel millions upon millions of dollars both into Democratic primaries and into the midterm elections, is looking at people like Al Green, the kind of folks who would be leading any kind of accountability effort for impeachment for Trump, other members, and other accountability. And they're saying, oh, we got to take him out. He's a troublemaker. So if what you want is accountability for this regime, I would highly encourage you to find out what AIPAC is doing, find out what crypto is doing, and be a countervailing force. Do not allow these people to concentrate power further in their hands, because then we might take the House, but it's going to be with a lot of Democratic members who are like, but, crypto doesn't want us to do that, so we shouldn't move forward on that.
The one other thing that I do just want to add to all of this also is just because, we do a live Q&A. We try to be really transparent and authentic about our strategic logic and why we're doing some things and not other things as Indivisible. That does not mean that there are not also lanes for other people to do other things. And I think it's really important because that's our strategic calculation. And also, we are in a broader movement. Different people focus on different things. It is good to have different people trying different strategies and seeing what breaks through. And so please don't take, whenever I comment on why is Indivisible not on this day of action, or why is it not throwing in on this coalition? It's not a statement globally about any of the stuff. It's a statement about how we've chosen to chart the course for this organization specifically.
I know we're over time, but we so rarely get critical questions. And so I really want to read Jen's question because I appreciate it. Jen, I appreciate you coming here and asking the question. And it's about primaries, which can get contentious. So Leah, let's answer this question because I think it's a good one. Jen says, my question is, how can Indivisible endorse Brad Lander over Dan Goldman in good faith when Ezra himself said that Indivisible would not get involved in primaries except against the worst of the worst Democrats? Dan Goldman is not the quote unquote worst of the worst Democrat. He has been working hard in New York Tins since he took office, uniquely qualified to stand up and act against the fascist regime. I would agree, based on his resume, he looks like somebody who would be uniquely qualified to stand up against the fascist regime. Jen links to an article, happy to put in the article if people want to read it. Ends with, I strongly and wholeheartedly push back against this endorsement as an activist and in the former Democratic district leader for part of Dan's district. I endorsed Brad Lander for mayor, and I campaigned for Elizabeth Warren, New Hampshire. I've been on almost every What's the Plan since the call's inception, and I'm involved with 2 Indivisible groups. I think you got cut off. But Jen, heard loud and clear, one of the things about Democratic primaries, just to be clear, is people are going to disagree. And I think this is one of the reasons why good people engaged in trying to fight back against this regime shy away from primaries, because a lot of us didn't get involved here to fight amongst each other. We wanted to beat back the regime that is terrorizing our communities, and you find yourselves in these primaries where genuinely good people find themselves on different sides. That's what makes this hard work. I don't think that means we shouldn't engage. I actually think it's important for us to do this work and debate about the future of the party. When it comes to Dan Goldman, I would agree. There are plenty of Democrats that are worse than Dan Goldman. I do believe this is one of the safest Democratic districts in the entire country. So one of the bluest blue districts. And so you have to ask yourself, is this the best fighter that we can have? And that's a question I can ask myself. That's a question Leah can ask herself. Doesn't particularly matter if we ask ourselves that, because we don't live in New York's 10th. It fundamentally comes down to, what do the people of New York's 10th think? I, as much as I might have preferences in politics, I so fundamentally believe in lowercase d democracy and the democratic operation of the Indivisible movement that if Indivisible groups don't want to get involved, we don't get involved. So the reason why Indivisible National is involved, first of all, at all in this, is because Indivisible Brooklyn has gotten behind Brad Lander, endorsed and nominated for endorsement. And when they do that, that's when we peek under the hood and we're like, okay, what's the difference between these candidates? Is there actually something bad about Dan Goldman and something great about Brad Lander? And look, I think there's a lot of good things about Goldman. I wouldn't paint him as the worst villain that's out there. I would say he's one of the Democrats who refused to get behind Mamdani. He's one of the Democrats who's taken a lot of money from crypto. And even beyond the specific problems with crypto, which is currently trying to wield influence within the Democratic Party, there are a set of Democrats out there that aren't ideologically conservative, but they're tactically and strategically conservative, which is to say, without a lot of push, they're not going to use all of the power they've got in order to fight back. Brad Lander doesn't fall into that category. And as we've engaged with this question, that is what's come through loud and clear. So we ran through the process after Indivisible Brooklyn nominated him. We then put it out to a vote to all of the Indivisible members in New York 10th. And by massive margins, Indivisible members voted to endorse Brad Lander. That's why Brad got a national endorsement from Indivisible.
I think it was what, like 85?
It was 80. It was between 80 and 90%. It was not close.
It wasn't close. And we don't, if it's 51 to 49 in an endorsement vote, we don't move forward.
We don't move.
Right?
You need a super majority. So you need more than 60% when we do a vote in order to get there. This was not a close vote. And that still means some people are going to be pissed off. And that's how primaries work. And I wish there was unanimity, but if you require unanimity, you never move on any of this.
I do want to harp on one specific thing about the Lander Goldman race, because I think it's actually a really, it's an interesting thread in what is currently happening in the Democratic Party. So you have the upset Mamdani victory in the Democratic primary for mayor last year. And immediately afterwards, there's this scramble around, is someone going to challenge him? Andrew Cuomo decides he's going to run as an independent. He's not had enough of losing yet. He's going to try again. And he starts trying to consolidate broader support around him. And he starts trying to hold off Democratic consolidation around Mamdani. And there are a set of people who said, well, look, Mamdani won the Democratic primary. He may not have been my candidate, but I'm getting behind him because I get behind the candidate who won the primary. That has always, always, always been Indivisible's rule. It does not matter whether we have beef with somebody. You win the primary, we're behind you because we understand that general elections are about beating the fucking fascists. And we're going to have all of our arguments in the primary, and then we are going to come together behind whatever candidate they are, no matter, whether they make my heart sing or not, and we're going to beat the fucking fascists. That's the deal. That is the expectation. That was not the deal that was upheld by core parts of Democratic leadership or Dan Goldman in this situation, right? Chuck Schumer never to the end endorsed Mamdani, even as he was facing an increasingly obvious Republican front cover challenge by Andrew Cuomo. Dan Goldman never endorsed. I don't believe ever even said how he voted. This is actually like a pretty big deal because, we are operating in an environment in which we're asking a lot of people sometimes to, vote for the least bad option, vote for the person who won the primary, even if you don't love them. From the left side, right? We're going to people who are not happy sometimes with their centrist options and are saying, look, I know you're not thrilled. We still gotta support the candidate who will uphold basic foundations of democracy because they won the primary. It's a really, really, really big deal when people who are in the central or moderate side of the party decide that they don't have to uphold that same obligation when somebody from the left wins. It is a really big deal. It breaks trust in a very serious and very scary way. And so I actually think that it's pretty important to emphasize that part of what we're doing here is we're saying, are the same obligations that we as progressives have been trying to uphold about party unity being honored and observed by the folks on the moderate side and moderate or centrist side? Is it the same set of rules?
Jen, I hope you're still on the call, Jen. I saw you in the chat. I really do appreciate the question, though, because I think with primaries, we're not always all going to agree. And I would like for us to be able to have genuine disagreements. And then once the primaries are over, we are going to have to unify and stomp the fascists in the midterms. That is the plan. We're going to win, I think, a lot of these primaries. We're going to lose other of these primaries. And exactly as Leah said, once the primaries are over, it's done. It's a choice between the fascist and some flavor of Democrat. And I will take any flavor of Democrat over one of these fascists in the Republican Party. So encourage folks to continue to come in. I welcome more critical questions. This is a live, real discussion, y'all. That's why we do What's the Plan? We're not looking to just cheerlead. We're working through hard stuff. And when it comes to primaries, that can be hard. But please come, keep on coming, keep on asking questions. We're going to be out there with y'all every step of the way. And if there are ways we can improve this, let us know. I think that's the plan, Leah. Is that the plan?
That's the plan.
See y'all next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern on Zoom, or if you're listening to the podcast, you'll hear from us again next Friday. See y'all next week, y'all.